Time for us to dive deep into a great conversation with the Port of Shelton with Dick Taylor and Wendy Smith. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am well. First things first, before we get to port business, you were in attendance last night at the historic city council as they elected the new mayor there, Bob Rogers, who was just on the air, Deputy Mayor Deidre Peterson as well. What do you think about all this stuff?
Well, you know, I'm a former city commissioner.
Yeah.
So, and when I was doing it, serving, I thought we served well. I thought the commission served the community well with what we were doing. And we were unique. We were the only one in the state left.
Yeah.
When I started, I think there were 2 or 3, and then they dropped out, and we were the last one. So for the past, since early 2000s, we were the only commission form of municipal government.
Yeah.
And change happens. So we'll see.
See how it works.
Yeah.
Get some fresh voices in there.
Got some new
more
people.
voices for sure.
Yeah.
You guys were off last week out attending the Washington Public Ports Association meeting. How did that go? What did you guys talk about?
All kinds of stuff. Yeah, but it went well. It went well. There were how many ports there? I can't remember.
I think there's 75 members or something.
Yeah,
but,
so we probably
there's probably 45 that go. Or
45 to 50 ports were there.
Are those based on size or just public?
Just
ports?
Public.
Yeah.
Just public ports. Yeah.
Anybody can
belong.
Mm-hmm.
So it ranges from the membership ranges from Port of Seattle and Tacoma down to like Duato.
Yeah.
Or Grapeview, or I don't know if Grapeview's a member.
I don't either, but Duato is.
Yeah, Duato is. So
from large to small.
Yeah,
and
all over the state. So they rotate where the meetings are. This one was in Vancouver, so people don't have to travel as far if they're going from east to west or west to east. Or
what are some of the big concerns the public ports are having nowadays?
Go ahead.
Well, I would say, the big thing that's hitting is a lot of the super extreme legislation, not legislation, but legal fights really on regulatory. So, and there's no definition of any of that. So, for instance, there's varying things like, down in Port of Vancouver, we've watched the fights over the coal terminals and the river keepers, and, there's that. But there's also talk of SEPA and what we have to do, and then it's kind of like we have to do that, but we don't know what we have to do. So there's a lot of kind of looming things that they're hoping to tackle next legislative session. The good news is with a session that was short and that ended on time for once, there's the ability for our Public Ports Association to actually visit ports and really go around the area and talk and get our legislative package, so to speak, ready this summer, because it starts then, not next January. So that's kind of the good news, and then there's just a lot of good stuff going on. With the public ports is redoing their website to make it easier for anyone going on the site and us as members to look at. You never want to reinvent a policy or something, so they'll have members can go in and look up we need to update our finance policy, and we can look at samples and so a little bit like MRSC does or whatever. So there's a lot of good stuff going on, but it's always great to just get together with those people and meet and discuss, and you have
swap ideas.
We do that.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Are there any concerns with some of these regulatory potential fights or whatever up in the future that ports will just kind of throw their hands up and say?
Well, I don't know if they'll throw their hands up.
I don't
think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't either.
They're going to fight. They're going to resist some of them. For example, on SEPA. If you consider on the coal trains, for example, if the coal comes out of North Dakota or wherever it's coming from, then you have to look at the environmental impacts on the route that where it came from, on the route that it came to, where it gets to on the coast, where it gets shipped to wherever it's going, say China, Taiwan, wherever, and the environmental effects that take place there.
In China.
Yes.
So you have to look at the whole deal.
On some of them, yeah. You got to look at the whole train. And how can you do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
How can you do that reasonably?
Yeah.
So, these are some of the challenges that we have.
The other thing to note is that ports in the state and across the country are major economic drivers.
Yeah.
So they don't want to spite their nose for their face on some of these kind of issues. I mean, you guys in the Port of Shelton have, you're near 1,000
Yeah, 900, a little over 900
employees
right
based
now.
on the tenants and all that stuff.
Yep.
I mean, that is a major impact in our community and the other communities where ports are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the speakers they brought in, you kind of think, oh, that's weird. And, the top dog at Dairy Gold, for instance, and how does that, relate? Well, it totally relates with the trade and and there's a lot of concerns there with what's going on with, economy and tariffs and relations with other countries. And I mean, we rely on our exporting, in many ways, the wood industry, the agriculture.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to hear, kind of from those people that are in those industries and not just the government officials that are making rules or whatever. So it's really kind of takes you out of your day to day and really thinking
And
more
your
globally.
own little
corner of the
exactly. And looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
And how we do fit in with the global economy and the regional economy.
Pretty amazing.
That sort of thing. So
You guys hired an assessor for the Marina, huh?
An appraiser.
Appraiser.
Yep, we did. Strickland, Heichman, and Haas. Gosh, I always struggle with that for some reason, but they're out of Tacoma. They've done appraisals on several marinas, and that was kind of the next step that the commission suggested to me. Let's find out what is the value. We signed a letter of engagement last week, and he said about 45 days. So of course,
nice.
I owe him lots of stuff, our revenues and expenses, and all kinds of stuff.
So what all do they look at? The number of slips, the size of the piece of property itself, how deep the water is, and all that good stuff?
Yes.
All of it. They look at all of it. Plus all the past, there's been surveys, there's been studies. They look at all that. They look at our revenue stream, our expenses. They look at that cost, that estimate for redoing that that goes into it. I mean, what can you make on something? What is the value of something if you have a $2.8 million cost on the other side? So they'll look at everything.
It's strictly Marina. There won't be any sort of Johns Prairie or Sanderson Field.
No,
This
just
is
Marina.
This is just what we think the Marina's dealing with.
Right.
Yep.
Cool.
For now.
What else is going on? What's happening up at Sanderson Field? Anything good these days?
We're starting in the planning for the runway overlay. Starts now.
That's important.
We've been doing that,
Engineering for that.
Yeah, so that's all happening, and
So
that includes quite a bit of environmental, review. I think I said a couple shows ago that Brandon was successfully able to talk the FAA into combining our projects. So that means just one environmental review as opposed to several. So that's great stuff. The jet car, Ed Shadle, and the American
he was here a
Eagle
couple
was
weeks
up.
ago, yeah.
No, he was here Saturday.
I couldn't remember.
Saturday.
Next time they're here, get out there and see that thing.
It was kind of a not for sure, and so we didn't do a lot of press engagement just based on he may not come, but and it could end up there's talk of possibly, and we're going to check with him on one of the History Channels or one of the shows that they were doing some filming on speed and different things. So so we'll see.
So I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, but it's pretty much like an F-15 without the wings. Imagine that.
I think it's F-104.
Is that what it is?
I don't know.
It's got no wings on it, but it's the jet.
Fighter aircraft,
Wow.
Yeah, and it just, so
got
they
wheels
tie
instead
it
of wings.
down.
Did you see it go?
It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go. They tie it.
Here they're doing engine testing, so it's tied down so it won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's loud. And,
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
For sure.
But probably the coolest part of that whole dynamics is because he was unsure he was coming, he asked for that date, and that date was used by another one of our car clubs that is, a consistent user. And we've kind of integrated this program where those user groups are interacting with each other. So when they call us and we say, oh, that date's taken, they're able to call the other group and say, hey, is there any chance you're done early? You don't start till later. And they work it out themselves, and it's really awesome.
Are you going to stick around and come see what we're doing?
Yeah, see, all right.
And that's exactly what happened happened this last weekend.
Fun.
Yep.
Fun.
Oh, cool.
What good stuff.
Yeah. So.
Dick Taylor and Wendy Smith from the Port of Shelton. Always good conversations.